Hi everyone, Dane Lundgren here. I'm Jade's husband, and this is the fourth installment of this Lenten series on prayer that was originally going to be our Wednesday night series, but since we can't meet together, we're sending it out in videos. I hope everyone's doing okay. I know these are difficult times and difficult days, and so we're still trying to be community here and still trying to do church and just figuring that out. And so this is kind of part of that. So this is the fourth part. In the first part, we did kind of an introduction and we talked about why prayer is important and what prayer is. In the second part, we talked about the Lord's Prayer as a format for our prayer times. And then in the last session, we talked about how you can use the Psalms to enrich your prayer life. And so during this time, I want to talk, these are just sort of like practical tips, because again, prayer is hard, it's difficult, and we're distracted, and we live in an age where there's, our Apple Watch is pinging us, and we're getting text messages. And so I want to just tell you some things that I have found helpful over the years to actually have a good prayer time without being distracted. So the first thing, and I apologize, I'm looking over here, I have a PowerPoint that helps me. That was how the talk was originally designed. But the first tip that I have is to make a prayer list, to write it down. So this is mine. What I do is I have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday together. And I kind of copy this forward and adjust it each quarter. This is my Michael Hyatt planner. So on Monday, I have things that I pray for, and then Tuesday they're different. And so it just helps me. And there's things that I don't want to forget to pray for. And so I write them down, and then when I'm having my prayer time, I can look down my list and remember what I need to pray for. And then also if I get distracted and I'm like, where was I, what's going on? My thoughts wander. This kind of returns me back. Oh yeah, I need to pray for my brother and his family. Oh yeah, I need to pray for St. Philip's, because that's something we all need to pray for. We need to pray for our pastors and our church and each other. And so there's different things that I write down, and there's a lot of ways in which we need to pray for each other. And so again, just a list. This is helpful, just kind of a practical thing. A second thing that I think is helpful is to remember your physical posturing during prayer. This is why when we're little, we're taught to fold our hands, right? Because then we're not, doing stuff with our hands. We close our eyes, right? Because then we don't see things. And that works twofold. One, we close our eyes so that we're not distracted by the things that we're seeing. But two, then we can have a mental image and we can see a picture of what we're praying for. And that's actually a really cool thing to do. If you're praying, for example, for someone to be healed, you can picture them being healed in your mind as you pray. If you're praying for a person, for God blessing them, you can picture that. I like to picture, one of the things that I picture, this is sort of random, but I picture like an angel up in heaven, like dumping over a bucket, and it's just like pouring out blessings on people. And that's just an image that God gave me one day, and I like it, and so I return to it in prayer. And we close our eyes so that we can do that. Another thing, when we come up and take communion, we kneel, and kneeling when you pray is one, a sign of humility with your body, that you're honoring something, you're bowing before God, you're acknowledging that you're reverencing Him, and the connection of your mind and your body will help you stay on focus when you pray. Jade does this all the time. Like, there's a lot of mornings when I come down and I'm getting coffee and I look over and Jade's kneeling over, having her prayer time, and she's bowed down on her knees praying, and that's just a helpful thing. You can do other things with your hands. You can lift your hands like we do in worship in honor of reverence for God. That can be helpful. Another thing that I do sometimes, I actually will do laps around the main floor of my house. And I actually, while I do that, I'm praying for God to fill my house. I see, when I do that, I keep my eyes open. But I see things that remind me of stuff going on. I see, something that my daughter Anna had, and I pray for Anna, and it helps me to just continue to pray. And when I do that, I actually often pray out loud. And if you can, I would recommend that for sure. It keeps you on track because you're actually speaking the words. And it really helps with focus. And so, we talked about that with praying the Psalms. We talked about saying it and reading it out loud so that you not only read it, but you hear yourself saying it. And I think praying out loud is actually a tool that I have found to be super helpful as well. Distractions are definitely an issue when you pray. We've said every time, prayer is not easy. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. Even those spiritual giants I talked about were honest about how difficult prayer was for them. And so a couple of things that are that I recommend, cell phones, watches, they're a distraction. You think sometimes when I'm praying, I'll think of someone and I'll say, oh, I should reach out to them. I should send them a text. I should, encourage them and whatever. And I'll find myself like, okay, I'll send them a text. Next thing you know, I'm on Instagram and it's, 10 minutes have passed and I have to go shower and get ready for work. So you don't want to waste your time that way. So what I'll do then is I actually keep a little pad. Actually, I usually have this with me, and I have a pen, and if I think of something that I want to do, I'll just jot it down so I can do it later, and I don't have to use my phone and get distracted that way. So that's just another tip that I do when I get distracted. The other things certainly help. I mentioned praying out loud, walking around. Those are other things that I think keep your focus during prayer so that your mind isn't wandering all the time. That is about it in terms of this session. I want to just conclude with a couple final thoughts. I think, prayer is something that you're not going to get good at unless you do it. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. One of the things I would encourage you to do is to pray with other people. I think, Pastor Steve does this all the time. Whenever I talk to him on the phone or we're together, he's always like, well, let's pray. And I appreciate that because it's not, sometimes it feels a little awkward, but you need to pray with other people. And you need to sometimes be vulnerable and ask other people to pray for you and have the courage to say, I need prayer. I'm struggling. I'm nervous about this, or I'm worried, or, we talked about praying for sick, and we need to be vulnerable and we need to ask other people for prayer. We have opportunities for prayer in church when we meet together, and I just would encourage you, don't be afraid to take advantage of those. Come up and have someone pray for you. I can pretty much guarantee that you'll be glad you did it. If you go up and you have someone put their hands on you and pray for you, you are going to feel better because God blesses that, and He will answer those prayers if you just have the courage to come up and ask for prayer. So those guys I mentioned, Richard Foster and Tim Keller, they specifically talked about praying with other people, and that was a major means that they grew in prayer. So I would just encourage you in your small groups, with your spouse, with your family, with friends in church, pray with other people. And then I would say, when you're praying for something, and this is another thing, when someone asks you to pray for something, that's another way that the list can help. Follow up on it. And I think this is a cool thing because, one, it shows the people that you care and that you actually did pray, right? Because how often do we say, oh, I'll pray for you, and then we forget? I'm convicted about that. But then you'll see how God answers prayers, and you'll be encouraged. And we've talked about that. God is faithful. He does answer prayers. We can give Him thanks ahead of time for the prayers that we're praying. And it will encourage you. And I would encourage you also to look back on your life and think about things you've asked for and prayed for and see how God has been faithful. And that will encourage you to continue to pray more. Just to be honest, like this whole time has been something where I've been like, man, I want to grow in my prayer life. And I have been convicted. I need to pray more with my family. I need to pray more for my kids. And so it's been really good for me to remember that and to be encouraged as I'm trying to teach and talk about prayer here. Again, I don't consider myself an expert, and this has really been like, okay, Dane, like you need to pray more, and you need to pray with your family. So it's been really good for me, and I hope it's been good for you. I want to just conclude with some really encouraging verses from 2nd Chronicles. This was actually Solomon when God was appearing to Solomon, and he said, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land." So what encouraging verses to know that when we seek God, He answers our prayers, He forgives our sins, and He heals our land. So that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in.